Welcome to the Modern Yogi Podcast. An exploration of ancient wisdom.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome back. We are on episode number
57.
My name is Shama Sangeeta.
My name is Priyadarshini.
And my name is Shamali, and we are the Modern Yogi Podcast.
The Modern Yogi Podcast.
At Modern Yogi Podcast on Instagram. So please make sure to follow us. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, we are going through the Bhagavad Gita from start to finish. So thank you so much for following along. We are currently on chapter 7, text number
28.
Yes. And I think, okay, if all goes well in this episode, guys, we are going to finish this entire chapter. I'm crossing my fingers. We're going to finish, and then we'll get up to chapter 8 in our next episode.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I cannot believe we're close to chapter 8.
I know.
Yeah, time has been flying. You know what they say when you're having fun.
Time flies when you're having fun.
So chapter 7 is all about, titled Knowledge of the Absolute. So we discussed so many things in this episode. Like Shama said, if all goes well, we're going to give a beautiful little summary that's embedded in the purport on the final text. But essentially, we're leaving chapter 6, which is all about dhyana yoga. And we've entered these next chunks of chapters, starting with chapter 7, is all about developing love. Because if you break down the Bhagavad Gita, you can chunk it into 3 different sections. So we're in the middle section, all about love of Krishna, how to love him, knowing about him. And we've always said to know someone is to love someone. So we're diving deeper into Krishna.
All right. And a quick recap of last episode. So Krishna talked about how he knows everything that happened in the past, everything that is happening now, and everything that will happen in the future. That's a pretty cool superhero move, isn't it?
Super cool.
Yeah.
And who can do that? Only Krishna can. And so he truly knows all, but who truly knows Krishna?
Oh, I like that.
Right?
He knows all, but who knows Krishna?
Yeah.
I love that.
Not a lot of people.
And you know who wrote that?
Oh,
Our beautiful Shams and Gita.
I mean, I dabble in a little bit of the writing. I write all the captions, but it's not
You're
my
so good at
talent.
it.
It's
Yeah.
Krishna
You
writing
are
through me.
So good
Right?
at it, and we appreciate you so
Thank
much
you so
that
much.
was beautifully said, beautifully
Yeah.
written.
Thank you so much. It reminds me of my mom when my mom used to be like, every time I did something good or right in life, she'd be like, "That's not you, that's Krishna." So now I can never take any credit for anything. So
Wow.
even writing talent is
You know,
Krishna.
I was actually about to comment. That's a nice reframing when you were like, oh, the ability comes from Krishna. And I've heard some people be like, who aren't necessarily on this path and are getting to know the philosophy. I've heard some people say like, oh, so whenever I do something bad is me, but something good is Krishna. And it's like, and sometimes we have...
that's a good point. I never really thought about it like that.
But the thing is, I think we have such a bit, what roots us and anchors us to this world is our ego. And our ego is so intertwined and embedded in the most subtle aspects that is very hard to kind of tease apart reality from our ego's perspective of reality. So attributing our good qualities to Krishna doesn't take away from, you're empowered by Krishna. It's still Shama Sangeeta writing these captions, but she's just acknowledging where it comes from.
Yeah, it's a sense of gratitude, right? It's not
Exactly.
necessarily to say that you have no part in this because your
Right.
hands wrote it, your brain thought it, and you are an individual because Krishna's in your heart, but you still have your individuality, right?
Right.
But it's more about being grateful for the gifts that you were given, for Krishna giving you this ability and this way of using it, for being an instrument, right?
Exactly. Because the deeper you go into a spiritual path, it's about, like Priya said, gratitude and the invocation prayers we say at the beginning, gratitude for the line of teachers we come from. It's gratitude and awareness in all aspects that contribute to us being here right now in the Modern Yogi Podcast.
Gee golly, guys, that was beautiful. I think one of the most powerful forces in this universe is this attitude of gratitude. So
I like that.
Thank you.
Attitude of gratitude.
Love it. All right. Before we start with chapter 7, text number 28, can I have the invocation, ladies, please?
Yes.
Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Translation. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual teacher opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto them. Love it. Look at us. Okay, perfect. Shall we?
I was going to say before we start, for those people that are like, well, when I do bad things, that's me. But, for the bad things, I mean, like for the good things and the bad things, all of them come from Krishna.
Right.
And one of them is about being grateful and the other one's about taking accountability so that we can become better.
Exactly. Right. Because I like that point because Krishna's given us in a way the raw materials, so to speak. And then we have free will. So whether we choose to use it in a good or a bad way, that's up to us.
Yeah.
But Krishna's given us the materials to work with.
Nice. All right.
Chapter
Chapter
7.
7.
Let's start in.
Text number 28.
Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are free from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination.
One more time, please.
Yes. Should I break it down a little bit?
Yeah, let's break it down.
Let's do it one part at a time. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives. So if you were a nun, just kidding. It could be anything.
No, it's true.
It could be a
People-
wealthy person who gave a lot to charity.
Gave a lot of donations, who was a philanthropist,
Yeah.
who was a spiritual person,
It could have been a person that was very poor but always chose to give to others.
Yeah.
very moral, right? Even if
Yeah.
they didn't have any money, but they were still always acting on the right side of morality.
And doing
Right.
acts of service. So any persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life.
Right. So continue the process. Not like, okay, dust my hands off. Work's
Done.
done. That's it. I've
Yeah.
achieved perfection.
And whose sinful actions are completely eradicated. So I have a point about this one.
Yes.
But it's maybe a whole conversation, so I won't get into it just now.
Okay.
So
But those good people whose sinful actions are
been
gone,
erased.
yes.
are free from the dualities of delusion. So
Right.
they're not confused by this world so much. They know that there will be difficulty and we just have to try our best to remember Krishna, to do acts of service, to become the kind of person that the Bhagavad Gita is telling us to be. Right?
Exactly. Because being a devotee doesn't mean you don't go through difficult times. But it comes to mind one thing that I've always heard my parents say, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So how we respond to the situations we go through.
Yeah. So that was are eradicated from free from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my Krishna service with determination. I like that, with determination.
Right.
Because I think sometimes life is hard and we have to be determined in order to accomplish something.
Right.
Even if it's something we want, even if whatever it might be, right?
Right.
So
What is the point that you wanted to make about sinful actions are completely eradicated?
I have a thought about that one.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to introduce the conversation of Ekadashi.
Okay.
Ooh, okay. What is this?
We may have talked about it briefly in the beginning, I think.
Yeah. Does anyone want to give a little how would they
Okay,
describe
can
Ekadashi?
I give the low budget interpretation and you class it up a little bit? Okay, so Ekadashi is a fast that people who worship Krishna, they do every 2 weeks, every, I don't know, fortnight, moon night, one of the something about the moon, right? And so every 2 weeks this moon thing happens, and then we as devotees of Krishna, we fast from grains and beans and anything delicious. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. And I do these fasts and they're really hard for me because all I eat is, so what you do usually eat is you eat fruits, you eat nuts,
Vegetables.
you eat potatoes, you eat things that are not grains and beans every 2 weeks on this very special day of Ekadashi. And if you actually read every single Ekadashi that exists throughout the calendar is very special to Lord Krishna. And you get different benefits from just fasting from grains and beans.
I just
in
want to
those
say
times.
it cracked me up as you're saying very austere, very difficult. We only eat fruit, nuts, grains. We can eat French fries. We can eat guacamole. Then we can make a little quinoa with some roasted vegetables. And then
it depends on people's perspective.
If you know how to
I
cook,
agree, I
okay?
agree.
And you know how to cook.
If you know how to cook, Ekadashi is easy, okay? If you don't like me, then you're just eating a bunch of cherries and guacamole. Okay?
My dad he hates Ekadashi because he feels his body constitution. He needs bread. He needs grains. So he suffers on Ekadashi. And he said before, I'm just so excited to go to the spiritual world where there's no more Ekadashi, man.
Yeah.
So wait, to answer your question, it's a fast that worshipers of Krishna do every 2 weeks, correct?
Yeah. And in simple terms, we like to cultivate, trying to perform these austerities because then we're not constantly trying to satisfy our senses. And it's a time when you can dedicate more of your day towards spiritual life.
You go inward and you think of Krishna more.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that, class it up now.
No, that's really good. I was also going to say Ekadashi for us is just a day to fast, but it's also a day in which, because you don't have to cook, and that's such a big part of most people's lives, like eating at least. It's a time in which you can dedicate a little more time to reading spiritual books. You can listen. You can do more with that time in which you're not taking the time to cook and eat.
Right.
It's also scientifically, I would have to pull the exact document, but it says that fasting, technically from all foods,
Right.
Every so often actually reduce the risk of cancer and
I've
heart attacks.
watched a couple of TikToks on this actually. Yeah. So what you're saying is very correct, actually. But they're TikToks from doctors. They're TikToks from doctors who talk about the benefits of fasting. And if you look at any major spiritual path or religion in the world, there's fasting included in every single one.
Yeah, super cool. So actually, there's lots of benefits. But one of the things that you also mentioned is that so there's a whole year, and in this year there's many Ekadashis because they happen every, I think it was fortnight. I think you're right.
Fortnite? I just made that up.
Is that correct?
Isn't that a video
Producer
game?
Abhijit?
Oh yeah, it's every fortnight.
It's every fortnight.
You.
Wow,
Yeah.
look at me. Look at me waxing and waning on this knowledge. All right. Okay, sorry.
No, you're good,
In all
you're
humility. Okay, go ahead. Every time I say something good about myself, I have to say, in all humility. And then I look up into the heavens and make sure I don't get struck by lightning.
I love that.
Sorry, continue. Every fortnight.
No, yeah. So, what was it? Oh, yeah. So, if you read these stories, so there's I don't know how many. If it's every 2 weeks, there might be 104 stories a year, roughly.
Wow, yeah.
Something like that.
Sure.
Anyways, so there's 104 stories, and that what it is that these stories are derived from times in which people did Ekadashi and what benefits they reaped from it. So they'll be like, oh, there once was a king who did this, this, and that, and for doing this sacrifice, he received the following benefits. And every Ekadashi, it kind of ends with, the benefits of this Ekadashi is that it takes away your sins, all your sinful activities. And then if you follow this Ekadashi thoroughly, you will get these benefits too. The king received it, you will receive it. And like, that's how it ends.
And I kind of love that because that's like a loophole to
Right.
like get a lot of like spiritual credit.
Yeah, because if you think about it, Srila Prabhupada, who brought this ancient wisdom to the West, he almost kind of negotiated the deal for us already because we don't have to do these elaborate yagyas and sacrifices. We just fast from whatever, grains, beans, whatever's like within the parameters of Ekadasi. And like I said, he already then negotiated that. So it has to be because the words of a pure devotee are always true.
Ooh, loophole. Okay, so if you are interested, this is not propaganda or anything, but if you're interested in the process or whatnot, and if you are thinking about fasting for Ekadashi, send us a DM on at Modern Yoga Podcast.
Yes.
And we can send us the location, like the city that you're in. And we can send you a website where it shows all of the Ekadashi dates for the year in your city.
Yeah, we can also send you, when Shama was starting to do Ekadashis, I made her a little card.
Oh my God.
With all the things you can, like are
was
not,
great.
you can and cannot eat kind of thing. And if you want a little cheat sheet that for Ekadashi, we can send you one of those.
Yeah. You should, like, Priyadarshini laminated this card and I still look at it to this day because every Ekadashi I'm like, oh, can't use this oil. Oh, but I can eat this. Oh, I can eat this. So she will mail that out to every single person for free.
I will send you a digital copy of it.
Never
happily.
mind. She will send you a digital copy of it for free. Just send us your email, DM us your email and we'll do that for you.
Yeah. Anyway, so basically the idea of this text where it says, those whose sinful activities are completely eradicated. I just thought about Ekadashis because that's one way for you to, do sacrifice to receive the benefit of your sinful actions being eradicated. And I just thought that was a cool connection.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So what is this verse really saying? So people who have done good stuff in the past, their sins from the past are erased. They are free from delusion and they engage themselves in loving Krishna and knowing Krishna. Correct.
And exactly. And delusion is basically this world, as we've talked about, has so many dualities. You're not bewildered when some tragic event comes your way and you're like, why, God, why? Why did this happen to me? You understand kind of how to reframe situations that you pass through. And I love, like we had said, this line that says with determination, because it reminds me, my spiritual master often said the difference with a devotee and a pure devotee, it's focus. It's the focus that they have. It's not like you maybe look at some pure devotees like Srila Prabhupada really are empowered beings who come into this world. But oftentimes you might look at a great personality and think, whoa, I can never be there. No, anyone has the opportunity to reach that platform if you're focused, if you're determined.
Yeah.
And that's just the difference.
What helps with determination? There's this point in the purport that says the elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees. For in that association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. What does that mean?
I love that.
It means hanging out with people who
Right.
also love Krishna.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
It helps a
It
million.
really does. I mean, if you want to hang out with people who are really into, what's that Spanish singer that you like?
Alejandro Sanz.
That guy. Whatever. Yeah,
I
that guy.
love that you brought it
Right?
up. I
So
wasn't gonna.
If you want to develop your love for him more, you hang out with groupies. You follow him on TikTok.
Yeah.
You do all the things, right? Because you hang around with people who like a certain thing, you're gonna like that certain thing even more.
It's
You
like
know what I mean?
infectious. And the line right under that, because that's one of the biggest parts of this purport is association is key.
Yes.
Right? So the part underneath says that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Because in this line, we talk about we're servant of the servant of the servant. And actually the person who is serving everyone else is the highest position. So oftentimes that's backward from modern day society. We think the person that's being served, it's the highest. The king who sits on the grand opulent throne, he must be the highest. But no, in our line, it's the opposite. Servant of the servant of the servant.
I kind of love that.
Me too. You want to serve the
beautiful thing,
devotees.
yeah.
And Srila Prabhupada, who brought all this, when he first came, and it was just all of these young kids, these hippies that didn't know about this ancient philosophy, he was serving them. He was cooking food for them. He was waiting in the back of the line to use the restroom. All these things that you can read about his life, that he really embodied that service mentality.
And it's not always easy. I remember when I first got into Krishna consciousness, like I still had a lot of like material friends and like a lot of friends who were not into spirituality. And then I had this small group of spiritual friends and I always kept them very separate and I did not mix church and state. You know what I mean? and so I very much kept them very separate. And then what I started to realize when I started just hanging out with my spiritual friends more, I started to lose taste for the things that me and my material friends used to hang out and talk about. You know what I mean? And it happened gradually, and it didn't happen because it was forced. You know, it just happened gradually because like I was looking for something deeper, right? So if that's what you're looking for in your life, hang out with people who want to do more spiritual things because I promise you, it'll change your life.
Right. You know, you touched upon the second bigger, there was only 2 points in this purport that I thought, okay, I really want to talk about. Number one, you talked about as association, and you said the word gradually just now, which is the second point that I think is very big to emphasize, because oftentimes we get impatient that when is it going to finally happen? I'm doing everything right. I still have all these desires. I'm suffering. Woe is me. But it says, okay, if we've done all these things, we've passed our lives practicing the principles of religion, acted piously, conquered sinful reactions, done devotional service, all these checklists.
Check.
Yeah. If we've done all of that, then it says this word twice. We gradually rise to pure knowledge of the Supreme, of Krishna. And then gradually after that, we can meditate in trance, in samadhi, in love and devotion on the supreme platform, on the supreme personality of Godhead. And that is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. But it's a very gradual process because if we've been in this cycle for thousands and thousands of lives, it's not going to happen like a light switch. I've brought this analogy before, but it's like unplugging a fan where it takes a bit for the blades to finally stop running, even when you've unplugged.
Oh, 100%.
So it'll take
Rome
a
wasn't
sec.
built in a day, right?
Rome wasn't built in a day.
Wasn't built in a day. All right. Anything else on this verse?
That was really sweet.
Yeah. I really like this verse. It's very beautiful.
You know, the under the thought of association is key. I like because the line underneath talks about kind of who we associate with. And Srila Prabhupada used to say something along the lines of, show me who your friends are or who your circle is, and I'll tell you who you are.
Yes.
Because if we think I'm so above who I always spend my time with, then that's a little, how do I say, inflated of you. Because you know what? Inevitably, you're going to kind of rub off. They'll rub off on you. You'll rub off on them. And you're going to be a whole kind of accumulation of everyone's kind of consciousness there, you know? So associate with people who are higher than you so you could absorb their association.
It's very powerful. Like whoever you hang out with, like is very powerful. It has such an impact on so many layers of your consciousness.
Yeah.
And like you might not notice it, but then eventually you're like, oh my God, I've been hanging out with these druggies and now I'm a druggie. You know?
I think it takes some humility to admit that. Like we like think, no, I'm not going to be influenced, mom, you know, whatever.
Well,
As a kid.
I mean, it's like everyday living. Like even if it's in small influences, like you might be thinking like, oh, they're not going to shift my whole personality just because I'm hanging out with them. But slowly you'll actually see like even small stuff that you like, okay, let's say you start changing your taste in music because of who they are. Like even little things, or you maybe add that into yours. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's bad things things that you can get from other people that are not like what you wanted.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, my spiritual master, along what you just said, Priya, a lot of times illustrated this point that when the material energy enters through one outlet, it might come out through a different outlet. And he gave this whole story, but the gist of it was there was this great sage, or I'm forgetting exactly who, but let's say a very elevated personality who was like celibate, all pure, he was still in this material realm working on his own thing.
We'll just call him Sagey McSage.
Sagey McSage. And someone sent like a woman to try to deviate him from his path. And he didn't mix with that woman. But that night, Maharaj always talks about how that night he went home and that was the first time in a long time he lay with his wife, so to speak. So he was saying the story to illustrate that when let's say we constantly watch TV or listen to music that has a certain state of consciousness, we're going to be affected, and that's going to come out through different avenues, through different outlets. So like the material energy is strong, and if we consume it, it's going to have its effect. We can't think we're above that. It kind of is within you, and it's going to have to find an outlet of release, you know? So he would tell this story. I wish I remembered the exact name, but that was the gist of it.
Super nice.
That was really nice.
All right. Shall we
Text
move
29, Shama Sangita.
All right, text 29. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental activities. All right, let's break
So we're
this
going to
down.
break this down a bit and talk also about what Brahman means, because this to me sounds, you know how we've often talked about a pure devotee doesn't want to just achieve liberation from this world. We just want to serve Krishna with love and devotion. And
Before you start that, would you want to read it one more time?
Yeah. And I think
before we
the
start
first sentence is self-explanatory. I think the harder part is the second sentence. So let me read the first one. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me, Krishna, in devotional service, which makes sense because as we mentioned in the past, birth, death, and old age and disease do not affect the spiritual in our spiritual body.
Does not
right?
exist.
It doesn't
Right.
exist in the spiritual world. It only exists in this material world, right?
Because by definition, if it's material, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So that which goes beyond.
So smart people who are trying to get liberated, they try to focus on Krishna. Essentially, that's what the first sentence means, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now this is where it gets a little fun. Okay. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental activities. So I think, all right, go, ladies, go.
Okay.
All right.
Shama's ready.
I'm ready. No, I looked up in the glossary, and Brahman, it might be confusing because Brahman has a few definitions. Number one, Brahman is the individual soul. So, okay, that's us. We have a material body and a spiritual soul. So Brahman can refer to the soul.
The spirit, yeah.
Yeah. Number two, Brahman is also the impersonal, all-pervasive aspect of the Supreme. So we've talked about Krishna or God is a person with an actual form, a spiritual form nonetheless, but a person. But his impersonal energy, that which surrounds all of this, like when we go in nature and we feel connected to God's presence, that is also his impersonal energy. It's Krishna's energy infusing everything. So that's also Brahman, the impersonal, all-pervasive, it's everywhere aspect of the Supreme. Third definition, Brahman is also the supreme personality of Godhead because it's Krishna, it's his energy infusing the impersonal creation. That's also him. You can't separate the two. And the last definition is the Mahatattva, or the total material substance. That's also Brahman.
So which definition are we talking about in this verse, right? Because he's talking about people who want to be liberated. They focus on Krishna, right?
Right.
And then Krishna says they are actually Brahman.
Well, I mean,
it said Prabhupada says it in actually the purport.
Let's do it.
It says only persons who perform activities in Krishna consciousness are actually entitled to be called Brahman because they're actually endeavoring to reach the Krishna planet. Such persons have no misgivings about Krishna, and thus they are factually Brahman.
These are like next level people who really like next level devotees, right? Like we're like trying to get to that level of devotion, right?
But they know everything about the transcendental activities. They're learning it. They're constantly wanting to bathe their mind in that realm.
Yeah.
Not only that, they're endeavoring to reach Krishna's planet, right? Like that's how it was phrased.
Like
in the
heaven,
purport.
right?
Yeah, they're trying to reach, like for a lot of us, I mean, let's just say, putting it out there, for a lot of people, they might think, oh yes, I'm a devotee, but it might take me a lot of lifetimes to get to Krishna. Like I might not be quite ready just yet. Like, I don't know if I could give up all the things and like focus so sincerely in this path, right? I don't know, maybe that's, but yeah, anyways, that's a perspective out there, right?
Right.
So there, on the opposite hand, you have people who can be 13, 20, 40, 50, 60 who are like, this is my mission. I am going back to heaven. I am going back to Krishna. I'm doing these things. I'm focused. This is my life. This is my endeavor. Like those people, I think that's who we're referring to here as Brahman.
So next level devotees.
Very dedicated.
You know what I want to say? I love, Priya, that you brought up, okay, yeah, you often hear this almost division. Okay, people who want to stay in the slow lane and people who want to go on the fast track. But what popped into my head was my guru, Kadambakana Maharaj, would always talk about, it is possible for us. My perspective is we can go back home in this life. And I want to make that accessible for everybody. So no one feels that just, maybe next round. I'm out of the race now, you know?
I think most gurus have that same feeling and mentality, and they want to encourage, because Indradyumna Swami says the same thing.
Right.
I've heard many gurus say the same thing. I think it sometimes takes a little while for people to click in and say okay, yes, this is the life. You know, I'm going to go in the fast lane, like you were saying, because it is complicated. There's so many anarthas, right? Like that we have to cleanse from our heart.
Anarthas are like the weeds of like ignorance that we have, like a kind of bad qualities,
the things
right?
we have to work on.
Qualities, just
Our
like all
ego.
traumas, ego, like all
Jealousy,
those things.
anger, greed,
right?
all that fun
We
stuff.
have all these things that kind of hold us back from like fully committing like to that full life of spirituality entirely, right?
Right. Well, and you know what I wanted to say, since, most gurus have this perspective, and I heard it most recently then from mine who really emphasize we can go back home in this lifetime. And I've talked before how he's already passed away. So if you watch the final video message that he ever released, he recorded a video when he was weeks away from dying and he wasn't already eating or drinking at that point. And no one saw the video till after he passed. And the video was so powerful. You could tell he was already seeing beyond. It wasn't just something he was repeating from the scriptures. He was really experiencing the other side already, with a foot already there, just waiting to kind of fully go. And he said, stay on the path. Please, just whatever you do, stay on the path. Don't slack. Don't let everything kind of crumble. Stay. And I promise you, I will be there waiting on the other side. And that almost urgency, made me feel like a god brother of mine said, man, I just want to go back to the spiritual world just to see him again. So really having him there added this feeling of urgency that might have not been there before. It's almost as if the veil to the other side lifted a little more, and I just want to see Maharaj again, So when we have these great personalities in this line, really like showing us the path and grabbing our hands and like climbing there with us, it's beautiful. And that connects to why association is so key, because you can really do it in this life. Just surround yourself with the people who inspire you to want to do that.
That's beautiful. I got goosebumps when you were recalling what his message and whatnot. That's really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that sense of urgency. It does take a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
This entire life and our spiritual life, it's not easy. It's a lot of giving up a lot of material things, letting go of our ego, letting go of our material desires, like hanging out with devotees, performing devotional service, chanting Krishna's names. Like, it is not easy. It is not for the faint of heart, but like he said, it's like, it's worth it.
And it's the most rewarding thing.
And I was going to say, it's also very joyful, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing I love about Krishna consciousness and like this bhakti path that I've always felt. It's like, I grew up in it and I always just felt so much joy. There's no reason for me to walk away because I'm so happy with devotees, with Krishna, and doing these activities and living this life. I can't picture anything more happy and just fulfilling, and just like that warm hug you feel from someone,
and it's true, right? And I think like when you look at someone who is on this path and they're doing it, they are really happy. I remember a time I was in Germany and I was with a friend of mine, and like Germans aren't known to be the most like happy people. You know what I mean? Like they're not known
Maybe
to
not
be
so expressive.
like hunky dory, cheery people. You know what I mean? Like it's just, you know, it is
think you
what it
understand what
is,
you're
right?
saying.
And so I remember I took my friend who was new to Krishna consciousness. I took her to the temple in Germany, and there was a whole bunch of German devotees that were singing and dancing and just like biggest smiles on their face. And she turned to me and she goes, "This is what is happening here, because Germans are never this happy." And I said, "These are German devotees. There's a difference."
yeah.
It's so crazy,
That
right?
gave me goosebumps.
It's true though, right? And there's like this joy that you mentioned, Priya, that is, you know, priceless.
So even though it's hard, there's so much good in it. You know, there's so much happiness and joy, and it's worth it, like you guys were saying.
Yeah, it's not, I like the emphasis on joy, because it's not a path that we have to trudge through. Like the words of Karamba Kanamars keep coming to my head, because even about this point, he says, if we try to rely on our own self and our own skills, like I can do this, I'm just going to chant my rounds and make it through. That's not going to last the rest of your life. You know, you have to, if you're feeling stuck, which it probably will happen at moments, you know, just like a relationship that ebbs and flows. Think of any marriage, any relationship in this world. It's not always the peaks. There's all emotions. It's very real. And we're developing a real relationship with the Supreme. So there's going to be moments that you're not inspired. So that just means do something to re-inspire yourself. That he always says, if you're looking at a menu of everything you can possibly do in Krishna consciousness, and you go to the section that says, chant 16 rounds, follow the 4 regulative principles. That's like the side that says boring, and you're just choosing to follow that. Spiritual life is so exciting and so fun. And his disciple, my god brother, Keshav Swami, says the Bhagavad Gita is a love book. It's a book of love, of developing divine love for Krishna. And I loved how he worded it. It's a book of love. Wow. We might think it's so rigid, so many rules and regulations, but at its core, the book is to get us to a feeling, and we're developing love. And if you think of it in that way, it's a love story. It's so joyful.
Yeah. And the cool thing about what you just said, I really like that. It's also a love story to yourself.
Yeah.
I think like if you look at some of the previous chapters we've seen, even though it sounds rigid, it's all for the sake of our well-being. It's self-care.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Oh,
real.
yeah. You know, it's like, okay, you know, don't eat too much or eat too little, or like,
Don't sleep too much, sleep too little.
yeah, like all these things are like meditate, take time to be peaceful. Like all of these things are actually for our like general happiness and well-being.
mental sanity.
Right. Mental sanity, you know?
Right.
So it's like, it's this beautiful thing to take care of your body, to learn more, to develop love. It seems rigid, but I think there's so much once you put the whole message together.
Right.
It's so beautiful, and yeah.
Because
just
exactly what you're
inspiring.
saying. It is for us, because when we're disconnected from our source, we're incomplete. And only when we reconnect to that love that's dormant within us is when we're truly complete. We're connected to what we're meant to be connected to. So that's a state of completeness. I love the last thing in the purport. It says, yeah, there's no birth, death, old age, and disease for the spiritual body. So one who attains the spiritual body becomes one of the associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's what we are. We're spirit. So it is said that one should understand that he is Brahman, spirit, soul. And that's the connection to the text. We are a spirit soul, not a material body.
Love that. Ladies, are we ready for the last verse?
No. Let me say something so we don't move to the last verse.
Okay. All right, let's try this.
This is a 3.
Wait, no. Wait.
Okay, go ahead.
I got you. Okay, no, I was just gonna say that.
Okay, continue.
Serious, I'm sorry. No, I was just going to say that this whole idea of like we've talked about this before, old age, birth and disease. They just like, I don't know, at this point there's a casual sentence that we say a lot in the Bhagavad Gita, and it almost like loses meaning.
Old age, disease.
But for the last couple of years, I feel like I've been around more elderly people, and they're spiritual elderly people. And every time I interact with them, it really gives more perspective to old age. We don't realize what we have until we lose it.
Like our health.
Our health, our like movements, lack of pain, these things that
This is foreshadowing what it talks a lot about this in chapter 8.
Amazing.
Like, we're going to get there, but that's a little kind of like preview.
Just, I mean, I don't know. I just thought about that and the reality, like thinking that there is a place without pain. Like right now I'm sore and I'm like thinking, imagine not being sore. I can't right now. Right. But just this thought of like no disease, no old age,
no pain,
pain.
no back pain,
I don't know.
No
that
neck pain.
Just came into my mind. I'm so sorry. Now make the grand announcement.
Ladies, are we ready for the last verse of chapter 7?
No way. This is a 3-text episode.
I know. Hopefully we're going to try to keep them all 3 text episodes and above, but we'll work on it. All right. Chapter 7, text number 30.
Those in full consciousness of me, says Krishna, who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation of the demigods and of all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death.
Ooh, break that down.
This is a big one, actually. And
it's like the encompassing text that says all the things, all the texts were saying.
Right. So, okay, those in full consciousness of me who know me, the Supreme Lord. What is full consciousness? Is when we're fully aware, we understand Krishna. How much can we really understand? We're trying to understand Krishna. Who know me. Okay, we're learning about his qualities, about his attributes, how he is, what are his pastimes. Because as we've said, to know someone is to love someone. So we can't really love someone if we barely even know what they're like. Okay, so if we know Krishna, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation.
What a sentence. Okay, what does that mean?
To understand that he is the creator of the material.
Yeah.
The creator, the maintainer, like
the origin, the everything.
The everything.
The blueprint.
The blueprint, the cause of all causes.
The architect.
And what is the material manifestation? Is everything in all our cosmos and beyond.
Trees,
everything.
The turtles, the fishies.
The turtles. Okay.
And all the cosmos.
I love that.
Of the demigods. And of all methods of sacrifice. So everything that's within this material manifestation.
But he's also saying governing principle, meaning like the CEO of these things as well.
Yes.
Right? Like the head of state for...
Like everything comes from him, whether they're us, jivas, souls, or even above us, the demigods, or even above that. Like everything is from him.
Mm-hmm. And I think he's also saying he's the governing principle of all methods of sacrifice. Like he's the creator of all of these things.
Right. Everything.
Yeah.
The everything of everything.
So when we know all of that to be coming from him and can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death. So basically saying that when death comes, if you know all these things and if spent your life really learning about Krishna, practicing to develop your relationship with him, then you can really understand and know him even at the time of death.
Okay, so have we ever talked about this notion before at the time of death? Because I think it's really important for us to understand in this particular philosophy, in this tradition, in Krishna consciousness, the most important time of your entire life is the moment of death.
Yeah. Right.
Because it says, and we'll talk about this will be further on in the Gita, but Krishna says that whatever you think about at the moment of death, that is what you attain in your next life. Exactly. So if you're thinking of you're super, super attached to Fluffy, your cat, and you're so attached and you love Fluffy, like you will be with Fluffy again in your next life, or you might be Fluffy. You know what I mean? like you might, whatever
Fluffy sister.
Or Fluffy sister, right? So like this notion of the moment of death is very, very important in the Gita. And I don't want anybody to take this very lightly because it is such an important moment. We are working towards, our entire lives are working towards this one moment, right?
And you might think like, oh, what does my whole life not matter? But that's like, that's not it. The whole thing is we're working to remember God
It's
at
a
the
life-
end of our lives. Like, think about when someone scares you, what do you yell? Like when you know, like when something crazy happens, even when someone brakes really hard in the car, what's the first reaction you have? Do you think of God or do you think I'm gonna die? You know, like, well, what is your reaction? In fact, for me, that was one thing I kind of trained myself into, and I don't necessarily do it anymore. But I trained myself into anytime I got scared in the car, if someone was like braking too hard or like I saw something coming, I go, "Hey, Tanya," or like Krishna, you know, like out of
Continue
fear.
doing it. That's hilarious. I mean, and also very good for your spiritual life. Yeah.
I know. And I just thought, if I were to die in this moment, I hope that counts. If I just train myself to do this, you know, then that's, but yeah, it's not about the fact that your life doesn't matter and only death matters, but rather that it's a whole life in preparation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if you're thinking of Krishna at the time of death, then you will go to Krishna. If you're thinking of Fluffy, you'll go to Fluffy. You're thinking about your husband, you'll go another lifetime with your husband, right? So whatever you have spent your entire life practicing and being attached to, that's what you will achieve if you think about it at the time of death.
And this is a very important point about death that I want to bring up that's unique to the Vedic literature, because in this material realm, normally death kind of breaks a relationship, because, you know, no matter how beautiful, real, and loving the relationship is, at the time of death, it's going to end. But when it's in the realm of the spiritual, death is the opportunity for the ultimate relationship maker. Because here Krishna says, we attain him if we think of him at the end of our life. So death then is a segue or an opportunity to have the relationship go even deeper and to be reunited with our source. So that's why Keshav Maharaj used to always say, death is the opportunity for the ultimate relationship maker. And
that's really sweet, because that's a way to kind of think of death in a more I lost my train of thought.
Lighthearted or auspicious or nicer way.
I don't know where I was going. My brain just went blank. Sorry. Go on.
But it is no. I think I know what you're trying to say. It's like it's a way to make death less scary.
Right.
Yeah.
Because and that's how we know if something is really real and eternal, if death will be what parts us or death will be what reunites us. Because at the time of death, I mean, Kadamba Kanna Maharaj said, I'll be there waiting for you. You know, he's going to be there. So I'll hopefully have made the most of this life to be reunited with him, to be reunited with Krishna. So all these things, that death is the door, the opportunity for the ultimate relationship maker.
Yeah. And if you've spent your whole life like cultivating this relationship with Krishna, then it'll be easy for you to remember Krishna at the time of death. But you also have to remember you're dealing with old age and disease, right? And your body's not, and your mind might not be in the right place. Your body's not in the right place. But if you have spent your entire life thinking about Krishna and serving Krishna and chanting Krishna's name, then at the time of death, it's a lot easier.
It's like if you imagine going on a roller coaster right now, and like one you've never been on before, and it's really fast and it's really scary, and like, are you really thinking of Krishna in that time, right? But what if you go to, like, let's say Six Flags all the time, and every time you get on a roller coaster you go Krishna, and like you practice that, and now next when you get to another roller coaster you're gonna think Krishna.
So we'll be seeing you at roller coasters, Krishna.
I'm totally, let's go to Six Flags and do that together.
Okay, deal. Oh my God. No, and you know what? There's part of the purport that talks about, again, this gradual process and association and how it plays into the death, because it says gradually, over time, by such transcendental association, so meaning when we really spend time with people who uplift us, who inspire us, who keep us on the path, then one becomes convinced of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because let's be real, many times we run into doubts, into different things in our heart which don't fully convince us. Because if we were really convinced, boy, then I don't know, we'd be crying tears of love for our eternal source. So it helps really convince us of Krishna. And then at the time of death, a Krishna conscious person can never forget Krishna, and then will be promoted to the planet of Krishna, Goloka Vrindavan.
That's the main destination.
I love that. I also, there's like another thing I could say about death, or, you know, I'll say it. So basically, another thing I really love about Krishna consciousness and this idea of death is I have seen multiple people die because I'm a devotee, and it's kind of interesting and unique. Not everyone has this experience, especially of people who you're not related to, seeing them die. And what I really appreciate also about that is the community. Most people die by themselves. Most people die alone. Most people have
afraid,
fear at the end of their death, at the end of their life, right? And what I've seen in this community and this, tradition is that people come together to be there and support, and they're singing and it's actually beautiful to think that one day I will build this community for myself in which I will have people there with all the well wishes reminding me of Krishna in those last moments.
Exactly.
Right? And that's another reason for the association.
Exactly.
Right?
Oh my God, that just made me teary-eyed just now. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh,
What reached you there?
Oh my God. Cause we're part of Priya's community, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And like,
it's y'all.
we're going to be doing that,
Oh, so you were like visualizing like each of us at the time of death surrounded by each other.
Yeah.
And with Shama Sangeeta wiping tears, that's how we're reaching the end of this episode.
That was beautiful.
Recap
Yes,
it.
yes,
So
recap.
basically, this is the last text of chapter 7, and we discussed so many things. We discussed about people in distress, inquisitive people who want material necessities, knowledge of the Brahman, knowledge of Paramatma, liberation from birth and death and disease and worship, and all of these things are encompassed in here, and it kind of comes together in this little bow, in which is. If we take pleasure in hearing and glorifying Krishna, if we take pleasure in understanding him better, we will come, doesn't matter where you're coming from, whether you're coming from being distressed, whether you're just curious, whether you actually have material need, Krishna's here for you and there is a path for you. And this is knowledge of the absolute.
And I love it because that determined faith, after you do all those things that Priya it's like a beautiful checklist, that is the beginning of bhakti yoga or transcendental loving service. And this 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is the substance of that conviction.
Love that. Please join us next time for chapter 8. Thanks so much for listening, everybody.
See you next time.
Hello, beautiful souls. If you like what you're hearing, please follow us on Instagram at Modern Yogi Podcast.
And if you love what you're hearing, please make sure to share a link to our podcast at Modern Yogi Podcast with all your friends, families, and long-lost cousins.
And if you have any questions at all, send us a DM on Instagram at Modern Yogi Podcast, and we'll be sure to get back to you.
Thank you for listening to
The Modern Yogi.